So as someone who's younger, I've had experiences in the past where I'm immediately assumed to be the assistant or, somebody who has to go and get the water or something like that. There was a company we had looked at that was a media company. I personally was not a fan of it, ended up doing an investment and it closed shop like 2 years later. So internally I was like, who called it?
You didn't listen to me. So here's what you should experience now. Do you mostly invest, number one, in a founder, number two, in the story or experience, number three, invest mostly or focus, prioritize the idea? Here is another cute baby. Do you know her?
I do, yeah, many years.
So when you look at this picture, what would you be thankful to this girl here? Hi everyone, I am Aytekin, host of Verso Talk podcast show that aims to feature immigrant investors and founders raising millions of dollars. Today our guest is Katie Fenner. She is a Femigrant from Poland and she's a former Goldman Sachs investor. Well, Katie, I am very, very excited to have you at our studio. You are our first guest. Welcome to the Verso Talk studio and please introduce yourself.
Perfect. Well, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here with everybody. As Aytekin mentioned, my name is Katie Fenner and I am an immigrant from Poland. We immigrated here when I was a child and spent a lot of my childhood here in Silicon Valley, but went to school back in Poland, so kind of been going back and forth a little bit. I started my career at Goldman Sachs in private wealth management for, 7 years or so, really investing across every type of asset class from stocks and bonds to private equity, venture capital. Was seated in a very unique team, one of the largest in the systems, and our biggest client was a multi-billionaire. So I had a very unique opportunity to do venture capital investments on their behalf. They had built out $1 billion portfolio. So imagine sitting there as a 22-year-old, 24-year-old, I was like, being able to go out and meet with founders, learn about their journey, where I really got that kind of exposure into the private markets and got excited about it. After some time, wanted to dive a little more into that realm and universe. So ended up leaving Goldman, went to pursue my MBA at Chicago Booth, where I spent a couple internships and opportunities at different venture firms, from a corporate venture arm at VMware, really diving into deep tech, to kind of other early stage investment firms. Subsequently joined a multifamily office that we were building out where we were focused on growth equity investments. So slightly later stage, think about it, Series C, B plus. Since have joined a startup really working with estate planning, but kind of working on an investment kind of firm on my own on the side. So long story short, kind of have seen it all and excited to, spend some time with you.
Very impressive background. Being in an investment world at such a young age, I believe helped you to learn many things that later helped you to be even more successful in your career. What were the main 3 challenges for you as an immigrant woman, especially at that age, to be in the male-dominated industry? Please tell me 3 key lessons that you learned helping you today.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think you kind of started off hitting one of the main points, that it is a male-dominated industry. I mean, even today, only 2% of women founders get venture capital money. You're seeing shifts now of that occurring, and we're having more female investors coming into play. But it's still fairly dominated by men, and especially in Silicon Valley, there's a lot of groupthink. So you see a lot of deals kind of passing through relationships. I think that's one of the big challenges. It's very relationship-based, and if you don't have kind of that network and growing female presence, it's tougher to kind of get past that. So as someone who's younger, I've had experiences in the past where, I'm immediately assumed to be the assistant or, somebody who has to go and get the water or something like that. It's happened, unfortunately, but
I want to interrupt you here because I want to touch the emotional part of it. Would you be open to share how did you feel at that time?
Yeah, definitely. It's tough because, I worked hard to get into an Ivy League school, worked my way into a Goldman internship. I didn't know anyone. And so you're, doing everything you can, checking all the boxes. And then you finally made it in front of the room with, important people.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're having conversations with them and you just overlooked. So it's tough, but, it builds character. I always say once you go through that, you realize, there's so much more you can do. But at the same time, I think I've had lots of conversations with great individuals who, don't treat you that way. I had a situation kind of like that where one of my male colleagues noticed it and actually called it out to the person. So it's growth. And that was an amazing feeling. And it gives you, hope that there are people out there that do care about that. So I think it's situational based and it's changing, but in the moment, it definitely doesn't feel great. I just think about the situations where, the opposite has happened and try to think more about that than on the downside.
Yes. So for any woman who are just started to be involved in the investment world, who might face or who are facing similar situations that you experienced many years ago, what would be your recommendation to them?
Yeah, I would say a couple of things. One, don't take it personally.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, some people just, they spent so long they'd never even realized they're doing that, making these assumptions. Try to surround yourself with people who, empower you and support you, who give you the opportunity to shine. And you'll see that in teams. And that's why I say who you work with is really important. I've had kind of bosses in the past, males who really do a good job of saying, this wasn't my work, this was, my associate's work, especially if, at an early age, you're doing a lot of the grunt work, I would say.
You're surrounded by great leaders who are real leaders, not bosses. What woman immigrant supposed to do when she doesn't get credits?
It's a tough situation. I think, you can definitely, and you should advocate for yourself. Make sure that when you're working on different items, try to get it in front of individuals. And if your, let's say, direct boss isn't someone who is recognizing that or putting steps forward, try to meet other people at the organization and, grab a coffee with them and just tell them, this is what I'm working on. Early on in my career, I always would actually send out notes to my entire team of, this week, this is what I worked on. And some individuals, would then forward that on to even upper management. So if you take opportunities to just let people know what you're working on, that can go a long way. And you never know who's noticing.
Yeah.
I think I learned that very, very early on. A lot of people assume, I do a great job. Everyone knows it's me doing it. But people are so busy. You should advocate for yourself when you can.
We have a quote, authentic talk, inspired lives. So I encourage you to be as authentic as possible. I would like to talk about mistakes. Most of the time, we don't feel comfortable to talk about it.
And made plenty of mistakes along the way, but I call them lessons as you go along. I love talking about that one, especially when we have interns and younger individuals, to one, not hide your mistakes. So, I used to run our internship program at Goldman for a little bit in the San Francisco office. And one of the first things I would always say is, don't hide your mistake. And I give off the first mistake I had. I had a big client meeting with a large endowment of schools. We had to print out 25 books and I put it together. And the first page, for whatever reason, it just said 0 for every single summary of their returns. And we had gone through the deck so many times, but we all missed it. And so, we're going to the meeting and it just says 0 returned for everything. So in that moment, I noticed it, brought it up immediately. And luckily for that reason, we had time, not hiding it, that we went to local, they had a printer there. We could print it out really quickly and put it in front. But in the moment, you're panicking.
Yeah, exactly.
Do we just, skip it and not even talk about it.
What's going to happen if I speak up, right? Will I be punished for it?
Exactly. But it was a good lesson because, being able to actually talk about it beforehand, obviously the rest of my team was, oh my gosh, let's just try to fix it if we can. And they were able to then realize, okay, we don't need to focus so much on this page and just go elsewhere if we can get it done in time. Otherwise, that would have been a bit of an awkward conversation.
Yes.
So that's a quick and easy kind of, early on mistake.
Fixable mistake, right?
Fixable mistake. I think the tougher ones are more mistakes of, not mistakes, but realizing, oh, I should have changed my career path or I should have done something different rather than staying in place. I think a lot of investors sometimes get stuck in their roles because they have, we call them either the golden handcuffs or they have a belief that they're going to be able to go into another position. I've been in places where, I was told I'd be able to have more leadership roles and I wouldn't come, waited and never had those conversations. And
would you mind tell how many years did it take from you, to be on a wait list?
Well, this particular situation I'm thinking about was a little bit later in my career. I had seen this occur with other people, but I had been at this company for over a year and, that seems like not a lot of time, but there was 3 of us there. And so when you have these conversations and you're told you're going to be stepped up and promoted and it's not happening, you kind of realize and you start to learn about, okay, are these individuals just saying that to keep you on?
Yeah, because they gave you hope.
Exactly. And sometimes you just need to think about, is this the right, situation? Are they actually going to stick to it? There are definitely situations where you're at a company and just the timing isn't right. For whatever reason, if it's budgets or there's team shifts happening, it might take a little bit longer. But if there's no kind of direct obstacles in the way and you're not being, changed in a way that you were promised, it's hard to then kind of get up and say, okay, I need to stop now because it's never going to change.
Right.
But I would say it's important to realize, am I ever going to reach what I'd like to be at in FA, or does it make sense to, go somewhere else and spend that time building the career path there?
When you started your career as an investor, what did you hope for?
That's a great question. I think I hoped for, a couple things. First, I personally really wanted to learn more about financial education and financial literacy. I think, when we moved here, stock markets, investing wasn't something that was talked about in, my parents' generation. They didn't know. So I grew up knowing this. And I went to University of Pennsylvania, where there's Wharton. So there's a lot of financial focus out there. And I realized I need to get more familiar with this. It can, change lives, and not only personally, but you can impact and help support the founders.
Exactly.
So for me, it was a big one, just learning point. I'm a really big believer in knowledge is power.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that you really have in your control is what you learn.
Exactly.
So that to me is really important. 2, I really wanted to be in situations where I could learn from other inspiring people and be able to have these conversations with, C-suite executives and people who are innovating. Having grown up or spent a lot of my childhood in Silicon Valley, I've seen, all these startups come up and it's exciting and you want to be part of that journey. I think as an investor, you really have the opportunity to get to meet a lot of these individuals and get to tap into, different industries if you want, or a particular one. And it's always changing. So if you're someone who, likes to learn about new companies or likes to learn about new trends that are happening and kind of keeping up with everything, the investor path is a really exciting one.
Yeah.
So for me, it was kind of education, getting to be around people that I find to be very inspiring, smart people who are really motivated and ambitious.
Right.
I think, one of the best things you can do in your career, whatever path you are, is just surrounding yourself with people you want to be like.
Yeah.
That goes a long way.
Do you remember the first company you invested and how many years ago it was?
Oh gosh. This would have been over a decade ago. We invested in a lot of companies on behalf of some of our clients, but a lot of them, one of our biggest clients was really focused on impact. So it was great to see we had invested in a company that was actually creating lunch kits and meals for kids, which was really fascinating. It was a duo set of moms who kind of got together and realized there's a better way to support our kids. So kind of being young, it was exciting to see you were investing in companies that are trying to do good.
How are they doing now? Are they still in the market?
They're still out there working with a lot of schools, so that's very, very
amazing
to see.
So you made a great decision at the time, right?
Yeah, it was good. So it's fun to kind of be able to see those investments kind of prove out, and then on the flip side, there are ones that don't work out.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, no, definitely happy to. There's investments that, one, don't work out, or two, you really want and they don't go through for whatever reason. So I remember we had done, and this also goes to say it depends how your teams are structured. There was a company we had looked at, that was a media company. I personally was not a fan of it. Ended up doing an investment and it closed shop, like 2 years later. So internally, I was like, woohoo, I called it.
You didn't listen to me. This is what you should experience now.
No. I mean, these decisions get made for a variety of reasons, but you have those situations, and I think especially with early stage, that's kind of the game of numbers, right? The whole point when you have a venture firm is to have a plethora of investments, and you have venture funds that are doing 50 plus companies, because the reality is there's so many that do close or don't make it past a certain stage, and you're hoping you find that one unicorn. Amongst kind of all the investments you make.
I believe you have many immigrant founders, right, that you invest. Please tell me 3 great pitches that you remember, and from the first time you were like, okay, I'm going to invest in it. And what made you believe from the first pitch?
I think anytime anyone's pitching, it's the story and being authentic. And two, the founders that really can showcase they've overcome a lot of obstacles go a long way. I remember one founder we spoke with who, at one point was homeless, and they went past that. They had a belief and a vision, and kind of worked their way back to start a company. And it's those type of founders where everyone kind of got excited and wanted to back them. That to me was a powerful story of, you can overcome tough situations, and it's making sure you don't give up. Those are the inspiring stories where you want to be, helping the founders, especially if what they're working on is, a good idea. That was kind of a good emotional one. I'm trying to think of any others that are really kind of powerful.
Here's another question comes. So ideas are something you can always pivot, right? And while you grow, you test, always opportunities you can pivot. So it's a bit tricky. Do you mostly invest, number one, in the founder, number two, in the story or experience, like you just mentioned? Number three, invest mostly or focus, prioritize the idea. From out of these 3, which comes number 1 and number 2, number 3 when you decide to invest?
So I would caveat that by saying it depends on the stage of investing. When it's early stage investing, all these metrics matter a lot. The later a company is, the more their actual performance starts to matter, and their tracking and, the churn rates, their revenue rates, etc. The further you kind of go on. But initially, When you're looking at seed, even Series A, I would say it's the team that matters the most. You'll see even a lot of large companies, the unicorns now, they started off doing one thing and had to completely pivot to become what they are.
Yeah.
And so that shows it's not the idea necessarily, it's the team, the individuals, their ability to be able to adapt. And, I think a lot of founders realized that during the pandemic.
Yeah.
You had companies that really had relied on individual presence, and then everything shut down and certain business models just didn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So the founders that were able to kind of switch their mindset and change their idea or what they were working on were able to survive that and bypass it. That's a very kind of focused short time period where you could easily see that. So I'm a big believer in it's the team that's working together. And if it is a team, making sure that they all like each other.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing a lot of people don't think about. It's like, oh, your credentials are perfect.
Yeah.
But if you guys aren't like a unit, working well.
How do you check it? How do you check the team if they really like each other? Do you text them for a dinner or something in a casual environment to see if they really like each other?
Yeah, no, definitely. It's interacting with them. It's talking to them, getting to know them. I think now we're actually in a better place in the investing cycle where investments, well, other than AI, take a little bit longer to go through as you're checking companies. Whereas in the past, it was like, boom, you have 1 week, let's like invest in this company. Just to make sure you beat other investors to it.
I see.
But being able to actually talk to the individuals, it's a lot of also checking with prior references for them, people they've worked with in the past.
You do it secretly? Do they know that you're doing background check in your own world? Or
it's a mix. You'll ask them, like, can we speak to someone who can talk to your character, or someone you work with in the past, and two, it's your network. If you know people in your network who know them, it's a fantastic.
You get feedback story, so
that's hopefully accurate and authentic.
Yeah.
But I always say if there's a team, talk to the individuals that are underneath the founders and ask them what the dynamics are like. You get a cleaner picture of how they're working today and seeing them interact. It's tough. It's subjective. You don't always get that right. And
exactly.
With time, things change. But spending a couple minutes just thinking about that also goes a long way.
Yeah.
Because it's tough when you're invest in a company and then a year later they split. The culture, the dynamics change, and it's tougher for that company to survive sometimes.
What do they need to focus to be successful when they're pitching, to increase their chances to get investment or to convince you?
Yeah, I would say it's a couple things. One is thinking about who you're pitching to. Make sure the investors that you're talking to are the ones that are investing in the space you're in. Have they invested to similar individuals like yourself? Look up their portfolio. Can your investments help add value to their other companies and their investments? Doing a little diligence on the actual investors goes a long way. You don't want to be pitching to someone who right off the bat isn't going to be supporting you at all. Second, I would say, practice. Speak with other investors if you have any other founders who have successfully raised. Ask them to listen to your pitch and see how you can modify that, get better, and join Femigrants.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a great timing. By the way, we are taking 1 minute break. And this is a time to talk about Femigrants. I really appreciate Katie bringing this to my attention. So, Femigrants is a non-profit organization. It's a global community of female immigrants that empowers diverse female immigrants in investment, in startups and tech companies. I am very excited to invite you all to join our annual forum that is hosted by Microsoft. It is on February 28th. It's all-day event starting 10 a.m. till 5 p.m. And we have incredible speakers. We have a startup founder. He's an immigrant and he built $1 billion startup company. We have executives from tech companies, founders and investors. So join Femigrant's annual forum to connect with successful immigrant leaders to expand your network and grow your career and business. Back to the studio. Describe yourself in 3 words. Why you chose these keywords?
Tough question, but I'll try my best. Optimistic, hardworking, and loyal.
Let's talk about loyalty. It's too hard to find loyal people now. What does loyal mean to you?
I think immigrants especially, it's something sometimes I find more powerful. You know, when you have that core, if it's your core nuclear family that you all move together, that's your whole world, you know, everyone that's supporting you. Maybe like when my parents moved here with us, they didn't speak English. So they couldn't connect with other people. It was kind of loyalty amongst themselves, among us. You know, we were learning English faster than they were, so we were helping them out. For me, you know, loyalty is just being able to rely on the people that you're with. And it goes a long way because, you know, one day you never know who you might need to help with, and being loyal goes a long way. I think it's so essential in a business and investing, especially in investing. If you think about it, I always say when you invest in a company, you're marrying the company. Loyalty is kind of the essential key there with trust to be behind it. That's what Sachs hit. For me, you know, I want to build those authentic, genuine relationships and have that comfort, you know, that feeling of safety that you get with loyalty. Helps sleep better at night. But it's just a powerful feeling that you have if you know that others can rely on you and you can rely on others. I've definitely had situations where people come to me and talk about some of their darkest moments, and it's tough, but you feel, you know, so thankful that they're willing to open up to you and know
because they trust you, right?
Yeah, and beyond any business relationship or anything, it's just, you know, we're all humans. You want to connect on that level and help each other, and you know, loyalty is kind of essential in the darkest times. You want to be surrounded by the people you know will be there to support you and won't turn their shoulder the other way.
Yeah. Very, very amazing. So you talked about childhood, and I have here pictures of a couple of kids. So here's the first kid. Do you know this kid?
No.
No. Okay, you will know her in one of our podcasts. Her name is Rux.
Okay.
Now I have another kid. Let me show you. I'm gonna show to the camera first. Here is another cute baby. Do you know her?
I do. Yeah, many years ago.
Yes. How old are you here?
I was probably 3 or 4 years old right there. We had recently moved from Poland to the US, so got to start learning how to swim for the first time.
Uh-huh. So when you look at this picture,
yeah,
what would you be thankful to this girl here?
I would probably be most thankful to, you know, my family. You know, being able to build those kind of values of, you know, support, trust. Things were tough at first, but they were always optimistic and hopeful. Having those lessons kind of helped drive me to where I am today and hopefully going forward and to my own daughter and future kids. So
yeah, you became a mom. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Your life, I believe, is different now than before, right?
A little bit different now.
So yeah, what would you like to pass to your kid as a mom?
So many things. We want to give them everything, but it's making sure, you know, obviously the basics, safety, food, that's a given. But really it's some of those values of, you know, being genuine, being a good person, even when it's hard to be a good person.
Yeah.
finding a passion or something that you want to work on that will drive you, I think curiosity, and hopefully one day, passing on something for them to strive for. It's my daughter's 4 months old now, and she really motivated me to start working on a side business that will
talk about it.
Yeah, I want to help her and other kids become financially successful and independent for the future. I'm calling it little legacy planning, which is fun, but really meant to help parents and others learn about the tools to help their own kids be successful. It's something that had my parents known this, it could have, provided a nice surprise one day in the future. And I want her to have that flexibility. I have a friend who was actually just telling me, we were talking about 529s and individual accounts like an UGMA or an UPMA, which is meant for parents to set up for their kids.
Mm-hmm.
And he was telling me his grandparents set one up for him. He had no idea. And then he turned 18, learned about it, and had some money in there that ultimately he used to create a startup, which he wouldn't have been able to do had that not been the case. And so I'm really excited and passionate about helping others, have that possibility in the future, especially immigrants, I would say, because
exactly
here, people are born here, they talk about it more.
Yeah.
But when you're not, you're coming into the country, you want to just survive. You want to get the basic essentials. You want to learn the language. This is the last thing on your mind.
Yeah, exactly.
If you even know that it's a possibility, you can create $50, right, can go a long way. The individual I mentioned, his grandparents put in $100 and it turned into double-digit thousands, over 18 years. So it's recognizing that even small amounts can really go a far way. And so I'm hoping to change the narrative and, make people realize that small steps can go a long way. And the first part of that is just education, like learning that it's even an option for them.
Yeah. I wish you all the best with your company, with your startup, and would be happy to support in any way. As an immigrant woman mom now, investor plus, right? How is your life different than being a woman investor before?
Yeah, it's different in the same in certain ways, but I think now it's so much more meaningful. There's, a certain level of discipline. There's characteristics that you really want to pass on. I think now I'm like, okay, what can I show for my daughter to understand that you end up just wanting to pass along and just be a good role model for your child. And you want them to know, even when life events happen, you have a kid, things get obviously tougher, especially at the beginning, to, not give up and use that as inspiration to start, making sure. I think it drives you to realize, life goes by quickly. And if you have desires or dreams, just rip the Band-Aid and do it, because there's no perfect day to start.
Yeah.
Just, start working on it, and you never know what happens. I think you get that motivation and realization that it's, start today. Whatever it is, start today.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid. It's tough, but if you can get through having kids, you can get through anything.
Yeah, exactly. What is your legacy?
Yet to come.
Yet to come.
No, we'll see. I hope to pass down just, being genuine and making sure you're true to yourself. And, working hard is a big part of it. It doesn't matter if you have, billions of dollars, you have $5. It's ultimately your internal kind of self-motivation that I think is really important. And building up those, desires, that curiosity, is something that I hope to pass along and inspire others to make sure that they're just curious, and they follow through with kind of their curiosities.
Any immigrant woman who wants to start learning about investment, What do they need to know?
I think a powerful resource is talking to people in your network and starting to have those conversations. Do you think about this? If you are, what are you doing?
Especially if somebody is in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
So like all investors, founders, money here, money there. They want to be investor, but they don't know anything about, right? Please educate these people who are passionate about becoming investor, but they don't know what they don't know.
One, I'm an open book, so I'm happy if anyone has questions to reach out, and I'm happy to help them along the journey, whether it's figuring out what tools they need, what resources. I'm one-on-ones, happy to do that.
Amazing. Thank you for that.
Want to pass it on, want to pass it forward. Looking up and learning the basics of as simple as what is a stock? What is a bond? What is the market? What is it? You have to understand what the public markets are and what the private markets are. I think it's, looking up what is an early stage company, what is a later stage. So it's kind of Googling. There's books you can follow. There's a lot of great podcasts to follow out there.
How does investment is different from saving, and why they are important?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question and a really important one, especially when you're thinking about yourself personally. I think a lot of, especially immigrants, are great at, savings. They have cash. Cash doesn't grow, right? So even if you're, one of the things that my new company I talk about is like a 529 or just an individual account for your kids. It's great if you put cash in there, but if you put, $100 every single month, it's not going to grow enough to, cover a full cost of college unless you actually invest that money, right? So you're buying stocks or anything that's growing, because most of the time right now cash is earning, around 4%, which is great. But before it was earning 0. So it's just sitting there and losing against inflation actually that we have. So it's important to, be able to invest your assets and actually make sure that over the long run, they're growing at a certain percentage. But, when you're thinking about savings, investments, you always want to make sure that you have like a nest egg or basically a rainy day fund, right? So you want to have some amount of money that covers hopefully 3 months of, expenses and keep that in cash. Absolutely. You never know what happens. You never know what you need. Try to have some amount that if your car breaks down or something happens, you have that. But if you have the ability to cover those basic expenses, try to invest the rest. And, over the long term, if it's, if you don't have a lot, just invest in, the basic indexes if you can, because those could grow. You won't have the ability to really invest in private companies. Once you have enough, capital, then you can start looking at investing in private companies as well. That's a lot riskier. As a lot of companies, 90 plus fail. So, you want to make sure that if you're putting money into these, it's money you're comfortable with knowing that you might not get it back. And so depending on how much you have, there's the crowdfunding you can do, so smaller checks, annual checks you can do to support.
How risky is it, crowdfunding and angel checks?
Right. So if you think about it, it's the private companies that, angel stage is usually an idea. Maybe they're starting off getting clients. You have no idea if they're going to find product market fit. Are they actually going to be able to build revenue, things like that? So it's very risky. Like I was saying, if you ever look at the charts of who goes from angel to seed to Series A, these are dwindling numbers as they go down. 90% plus don't really make it to seed Series A. So it's pretty risky, but when you're doing crowdfunding, you have the ability to write smaller checks.
How small it could be? Let's say I am an immigrant and I have some savings. 20K saving, 10K I can use as an emergency cash. And with 10K, I think that maybe I can invest. It would be less riskier with this amount.
So I would say, in all honesty, if that was me in my position, I might not be doing too many angel checks yet. If you really want to do the angel checks, do like $1,000 or a couple hundred. There's some platforms that I think you can do that little in. You'd want to probably just invest in the regular stock market, if you really want to be picking stocks, you can do that too. And the reason I say that is if you're investing in the public companies and you need that cash, you can sell your stock and get it back. Whereas with a private company, you can't just say, I want to sell my stock and get that cash back immediately.
Yeah.
It usually takes, 5-10 years before you can get that money back. So really understand that if you're putting money into a private company, you're probably not going to touch that for a decade. And if you have friends that you can support, absolutely, if you're comfortable with that risk, then you could probably do a small amount. But I would say slowly start building it up. And as the markets hopefully go up longer term, you'll have more capital in the future to be able to write, bigger checks that can actually be meaningful as well.
So any immigrant woman or man can start as minimum as $500 check? What is the minimum, like the low minimum they can start with? How much money do they need for it?
The different platforms to see what minimums they are, but I think there might be some that go down that little if I remember.
What is the return investment? Let's say if someone starts with $1,000, around approximately after 5 years.
Yeah, it's hard to say because, again, when it comes to, and we're talking about private companies, right, angel checks, the return is probably going to be very, very small, and you're moving to get one that actually goes through. So that's why, venture funds, again, they do 50 plus investments in companies. Most of them kind of flat, don't do great. And then there's the one that brings everything up. Yeah. Too, that brings it all.
Saves all the money, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why it's tough. It's a little bit of luck. It's knowing who the right, team is. And if you really believe in a team, you're, hopefully they have something that gets them past that line. But that's why they say private investing is risky.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
Yes. Exciting. Yeah.
You're working.
I might be nervous too, especially when you just start and when you don't have that much savings.
Yeah.
It would be very nervous, exciting and nervous, what will happen with your money, because I have only 10K savings and I'm using it towards investment.
Yeah. So in that case, I think, the public markets are the safer option than the private markets. If I would make sure at that point you do a lot of diligence into who the team is and, maybe take a bet on yourself.
Yeah.
You could also think about using that money on yourself, but it's, you have to really look at your own personal situation and see, what makes sense, what your expenses are like in the coming years and does it make sense we always say to lock up that money. Right. You have to really understand that you won't be able to touch that for a while.
Do you have any advice to immigrant women who wants to either pitch to investors or go to the investment world? Maybe one advice to each would be very helpful.
Yeah. I mean, across both of them, I would say don't take anything personally and don't give up. Any investor or any pitch that you do, any founder, you're going to get, 100 times more no's than yeses. Just consider it practice and keep going. Each time you do it, you'll learn something new. So keep staying motivated. I would say even for both, just network, get to know people, and talk to anyone. So I always say, you don't know who the person you're talking to is. They might know someone who in the end is going to introduce you to someone else, even if they are not an investor themselves or a founder. I've seen powerful stories like that come to action where the best people actually are not investors to somebody else.
Yes.
And then you have that warm introduction and you get even further.
Yeah.
So don't underestimate who you're talking to, just get it out there.
That's amazing. That's a great advice.
Yeah.
As a format of this podcast, so I wanted to inform the audience, we didn't send any questions to the guest speaker. It's all authentic conversation. We end the podcast by giving the guest speaker a chance to ask the host one question. Could be about the company, or snow that can I publicly share? Anything, any questions come to your mind, you can ask me.
Oh gosh, too many questions.
I will take only one. That's the format of the podcast.
That's fair. I guess I'd love to learn, what do you hope to learn through this podcast experience in your conversations with all?
This is really, really great question. First, I love to hearing immigrant stories, to learn their journeys, how they were able to come so far to become successful leaders. And as you, I am a strong believer to the education. And I also believe that you can learn from people's experiences that you cannot always learn at school or from the books. And from this conversation, I learned so much things from you today. And every time I will meet with immigrant founders and investors, they will share their education, their knowledge, their experience. It will be a new school for me. So especially I am not coming from investor background. This is a new level of education for me. I hope, number one, to hear and explore stories and plus bring visibility to immigrant stories. Number two, to educate myself on different topics, mostly on investment. Thank you so much, Katie. It was such a great pleasure to have you. I really appreciate, especially having a young kid and coming to the studio. It's a lot of work. Thank you so much. Today, our guest was Katie Fenner, immigrant from Poland, and she's an investor. Thank you so much.